What's up, guys? Dr. Gabrielle Lyon with Dr. Donald Layman, and we have your questions, and we're going to start answering your questions now. So here we go. This is from the video Calories, answering most common questions. Okay, so Trisha said, great video. I'd love to hear more about metabolism. Specifically, how do we climb out of the hole of a slow metabolism if you have dieted most of our lives using severe calorie restricted diets? How do we change that set point of metabolism? And she said, any help you could give would be appreciated. Thanks so much for all you do. And I will kick this one off, Trisha. Yo-yo dieting definitely can impact metabolism. It can damage metabolism. And the way in which it does this is the body is very smart. And if you feed it, for example, 800 calories for months, your body becomes accustomed to eating or taking in 800 calories, that once you try to increase calories, your body will gain weight easily because the body has now become accustomed to this very low calorie diet. One way that it can be helpful to overcome this, what we would call metabolic damage, would be to do something what they call as of a reverse diet. And this would be adding in a small percentage of calories over the long haul. For example, anywhere from whatever your current maintenance calories are, to then increase it, say 2% to 10%. And you would then add that in and slowly track your weight. You would not want to gain a substantial amount of weight. The whole idea of doing this would be to minimize fat gain while improving energy expenditure. Don, I don't know if you have another way in which you can correct metabolism or help increase.
I really don't know much about reverse dieting. I think that during any attempt to lower calories for weight loss, you have to be very sensitive to keeping your metabolism high. And the things that most of us have done are look at increasing protein, which tends to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, which is energy expenditure, and also increasing exercise, particularly more aerobic as well as resistant type exercise. So those are the two best ways to sort of maintain your lean tissue metabolism while you're trying to restrict calories. As far as trying to increase calories to change efficiency, I'd have to see a lot of research to make me believe that.
Well, there you guys have it. Okay, moving on to another question. Let's see. Thank you guys, Iron Force. Thanks for all these thank yous. People are tracking with chronometer, which is great. My doctor told me that a man over 50 years of age won't grow muscle any longer, but can only maintain muscle that they have, no matter how much calories or protein you consume. So my question, is that true? And this is from Springsteen. That's not true.
It's not true. I can attest that it's harder when you're over 50 than when you're 25, because the hormones aren't as much of a favorable process for you. But if you put in the work, have the right kinds of diets, but put in the resistance work, you can definitely develop muscles. But you're also fighting an aging process. So you're not going to gain as much mass at 60 as you would at 20.
This is a great question. I would love to learn how much protein for a 12-year-old boy. Also, a 19-year-old boy is a single dad. I want to give my sons the best way to take care of themselves. And this is from Domingo Homar III. And I actually was just reading this. It's interesting because there's two things that I'm seeing in the literature. Number one, resistance training is actually good for the youth. And oftentimes a lot of the data is in cardiorespiratory fitness. But in terms of muscular endurance, it seems like there's some good evidence that the training that individuals do younger, not just the connection of the central nervous system, but also with the improvement in the satellite cells and the myonuclei. And again, this is things that I'm just starting to look at in the research in terms of children, that is one reason why training when you're young really becomes important for prevention as you get older. And I was actually reading some data that individuals that were trained going into older adulthood, that they had less of an atrophy of skeletal muscle than an untrained older adult. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but that's interesting.
I mean, the parallel to that is what we know about bone health and osteoporosis. We know that people who have better calcium intakes and more physical activity when they're growing, sort of up through their 40s and establish a healthier bone structure, are much less likely to see bone wasting, osteoporosis, and aging. So I think sarcopenia is a lot like that. If you establish a really healthy, strong muscle mass, you're less likely to see that age-related loss, at least as an early age, as a sarcopenia. So yeah, I agree with that. I think there's been, if you even look at athletes, I think the concept of building mass, 50 years ago, people, when I was in high school doing athletics, nobody was lifting weights. They thought it would decrease your performance. But now you look at everyone who's an athlete, high performance, are going to lift weights, presumably specific for their training. You don't, if you're a baseball pitcher, you don't lift heavy weights on your upper body. I mean, you have to maintain certain muscle functions. Tennis players, but everybody is lifting weights and doing resistance for strength and muscle building, and I think we can all gain from that.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then the question Domingo had was, how much protein for a 12-year-old versus a 19-year-old boy? And the RDA is set the same for I don't want to say for children, because it's actually a little bit higher. I was just looking at that. But the minimum
but by the time you get to 12, basically it's the same as adults, 12 and a 19-year-old. And I think you and I would agree that the RDA is way too low, but it's actually the same for a 12-year-old and a 19-year-old.
And it's interesting. And I will potentially link the article to this. 0.8 grams per kilogram, right? So that's what the RDA is. And this study in particular was saying about, obviously, that use that through nitrogen balance studies, and they could even underestimate the needs by 60%.
Yeah.
Which
I mean, two things that a 12-year-old and a 19-year-old have going for them is they, one, eat a lot of calories. So generally they'll get enough protein just because they eat a lot, a lot more than I can eat. So the calories help. I forgot what the other thing was. What was I going to say?
Just the amount of protein. I was talking about the nitrogen balance studies, and that we're probably really undershooting the amount of protein needs for young adults. They also get away with.
I still think that the range that people should be falling in is 1.2 to 1.8, and you can kind of decide where in that, but I think 0.8 is way too low. And every study, I mean, again, there haven't been a lot of studies with kids under 18. I mean, it's when you're still dealing with growth, you can't run a study that might alter growth. And so ethically, we can't really study that group. So basically, is it adequate? The other thing that's different with young children versus adults, you and I talk a lot about meal distribution and 30 grams of protein or more at individual meals. That doesn't seem to matter in 12-year-olds. You can get 10 grams at a breakfast and 15 more grams at a snack and go through the day and add up the total, and they seem to grow perfectly fine. So a lot of the things we talk about meal thresholds for adults, and again, people over 35, don't seem to be true for 12-year-olds.
Yeah. I think that those are all really, really great points. Okay, so this is from the food label ones, and people are appreciating it. Yes, guys, thank you so much. We do spend a lot of time prepping and thinking about and doing this for you guys. So we all appreciate it. Manny's Fitness Fortress makes a comment saying most food labels go frequently unread, and that people find food labels to be misleading.
Agree about being not read. I'm not sure about misleading. I'm not sure what the
Yeah.
point.
Oh, here's one. Doctor, it could be really helpful if you kindly make a video on PDCAAS value of different foods items, since there's a lot of confusion on this topic.
Yeah,
What do you think?
the PDCAAS and DIAAS for protein quality, they really don't make much difference until you start talking about native plant material.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about diets with beans and lentils and things like that, you need to remember that the protein in plants is there for the sake of the plant, not for you. And a certain percentage of it, 40% is bound to fiber, which humans can't digest. And so when you look at the digestibility of these kinds of things, whether it's kidney beans or oats or whatever, oatmeal, you need to remember that someplace between 20 and 30% of that protein's not going to be digestible. And so there's the digestibility factor that's in it. And then you put it together with an amino acid score, and that gives you, those two factors give you the total PDCAAS or DIAAS score. In a plant, about half of that value comes up being because of the amino acid score, and half of it comes up because of digestibility. So you'll get something like wheat bran has a PDCAAS score of 0.4, and half of it's because it's not digestible, and half of it's because it doesn't have any lysine in it. So it's it's a combination of two things.
And we don't really look at DIAAS or PDCAAS in making decisions. It's safe to say that a high quality protein, comes from animal or whey, and a lower quality protein would be plant-based and just purely based on the matrix and the amino acid availability.
The way you and I talk about protein, we talk about people having 1.5 grams per kg. So people are getting up in the 120, 140, 160 grams per day. And if half of that is plant-based, it really doesn't matter that much. You've got enough total protein that'll balance it out. However, when you start talking about vegetarians or maybe vegans, now you're going to start talking about people who are driving their protein down to about 45 or 50 grams. And now the quality of those individual proteins does start making a difference. And they can be very deficient in lysine, methionine, leucine, tryptophan, threonine. Those five will show up. If you're only eating 50 grams of protein per day from plants, you're at risk for all five of those amino acids.
There you go. So here's a question. So Chris Steffens asked, great video. Any chance you and Dr. Layman would discuss the role of aerobic work in a muscle-centric approach to health? What intensity, length, frequency for optimal health? I think that's actually a great question. I think that there's a lot to that question. The role of aerobic work, I believe, is important. And I believe that that's important for mitochondrial function and overall maintaining capacity as you age, because that's one of the things, VO2 max decreases as you age. Some say that that may be to muscle, but I think that there's also influence of age on the cardiovascular system. The muscle-centric approach, so the idea of training for optimal health is different than training for performance. Individuals that do long endurance running, I will say the more ultra endurance athletes, they do have some cardiovascular hypertrophy over a period of time. Not everybody, but some of them certainly do. In terms of intensity, well, Don and I talk a lot about greater than 70, greater than 120 beats per minute will increase your utilization for carbohydrates, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think you started out exactly right. It's we're talking about mitochondrial effects and how the body is partitioning fuels, and you're looking to stimulate the heart rate. You want cardiovascular effects. You're increasing transports, oxygen transport, capillary perfusion, all those things go with it. And in the muscle, you're increasing your ability to burn fats. The threshold for intensity, you certainly have to stimulate your heart. As a person who's getting a little older, the 120 is age dependent. I find that, sort of when I'm working out now, I always want to get, 110 plus. I'm not sure that I sustain 120 beats per minute anymore, but, I think that it requires a stimulation of the heart. It's not just a walking and picking daisies.
Right. And then, they're asking for intensity. So Chris was asking for intensity, length, and frequency. Well, the current recommendation is 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity exercise a week, which I don't actually think is enough, but that is the current exercise guideline. I think, again, you have to think about an individual's goal, whether that is,
we used that threshold in one of the weight loss studies we did. So we had the individuals doing a minimum of 5 days a week of 30 minutes of exercise. So there's your 150. And we found that plus 2 days a week of resistance was very beneficial in changing body composition and metabolic performance. Partitioning how much was the resistance part and how much was the aerobic part. But the bottom line was that level combined with 2 days of resistance was very beneficial. But I agree with you. I think that higher, certainly if you want to use it as a calorie expenditure to generate weight loss, you need to be higher. But in terms of getting the cardiovascular benefits and things, that might be at least the minimum threshold to get a detectable benefit.
Yeah, I think that's great. So this is another question. Timothy says, Gabrielle, my whey protein contains 5.5 grams of BCAAs in it. I drink it immediately after my workout. Okay. Should I take 5 grams of BCAAs before my workout, or is the amount in my protein powder sufficient? So I would say you don't need branched chains before. Whey protein is a wonderful source of high quality, is a wonderful high quality protein source, especially because of the amino acid composition. So that would be my answer. I don't know if you have a different answer.
No, I think it'd be the same. And as far as even using the supplement with whey, the question is how much whey are they using? So if he's using 25 to 30 grams of whey in a shake, he's getting no extra benefit from the BCAAs even with it.
He's saying the whey protein contains 5.5 grams of branched chains. So it's probably.
I'm sorry. I thought he was doing a supplement. Yeah. So that's fine. Presumably the 5.5 is distributed as about 2.5 toward leucine and 2.5 toward valine isoleucine. The bottom line is you need to get at least 2.5 of leucine to have the effect he's looking for. As far as before exercise, the only data I know of benefit of branched chain amino acids before or during exercise is in endurance running. And I don't think that's what he was doing. So I have seen some data, it's about 50-50, that taking some during endurance running can increase endurance, but I don't know of any real benefit. We did multiple studies really in animals looking at taking branched chain amino acids before high intensity exercise, and we found no effect at all.
Yeah. I will say that the one thing when we talk about branched chain amino acids is that it's not branched chain amino acids alone won't generate new proteins. They won't be used, for laying down muscle because you require all the amino acids.
Yeah. So his effect of taking it with whey protein is exactly the right way to go.
When is the optimal time to take leucine or branched chain amino acids in regards to a meal, before a meal, with a meal, or after a meal? And I would say if your diet is high enough in protein, you don't actually need branched chain amino acids. But if you are eating a lower protein meal, for example, fish or maybe a plant-based protein, then you can add in a scoop of those branched chains.
Yeah, before or during, I would certainly have it early in the meal. I wouldn't wait till late. So I think I would, the issue of the branched chain is, again, getting 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine. You want that as early as possible in the absorption process, because that's what stimulates protein synthesis. So I would say earlier if you want to take it just before or during, right in, during the meal.
Okay, so this is a great one. So Atilo, sorry, hopefully I'm saying your name right. Hello, doctors. I'm a 67-year-old male that works out with weights 6 days a week, which is amazing. Example, squats, bench press, deadlifts 225 pounds. I've been drinking Extend BCAAs that contain glutamine. I find that helps with recovery of my muscles. Oh, by alleviating soreness. No question. You probably have the same experience. Okay. I think that's all for the glutamine questions. Oh, this is a good question. People, I think, will ask. So this question says, I think it's important to share with people where they can find these things. Valine, and they say meat, dairy products, soy products, bean, legumes, leucine the same. For isoleucine, this person says, I have no clue, but I found it in eggs, soy, turkey, chicken, lamb. Is that correct?
The good news is the branch chains, whether it's leucine, valine, and isoleucine, are pretty much in everything. And valine and isoleucine tend to go about the same amount. So wherever found, where she found valine, chances are isoleucine's there in about the same amount. So generally, you don't have to worry about the proportion. Usually it's enough.
Yeah.
But
okay.
any of the animal foods are always going to be rich in branched chain amino acids, but the plant foods have them also.
All right, guys, we really appreciate your questions. I'll go through and we'll look at some more. We'll do this again. If you guys have more questions, drop them in the comments below. And Don, you have a new website.
Oh, yeah. We're just launched a website. It's under the heading of metabolictransformations.com. And right now it has a lot of great information, particularly related to metabolism and protein, as you might expect. I wade into lipids every once in a while, tentatively. And so, yeah, start logging into it, follow it. There's some interesting tools there. You can calculate your protein needs and some of those kinds of things, metabolic age, and we're having fun with it. So hang on to it. In the next few months, maybe by mid-May, we're going to actually launch our weight loss program that we developed while working at the University of Illinois. So stay tuned for that. So yeah,
well, congratulations on all that. And we'll put a link down below so you can find Don's website here, and we'll see you guys soon. If you like this, please like, subscribe, share, ask your questions, and talk to you next time.